How's it going, guys? My name's Have a Blessed Day, and today I'm giving a different presentation on 11 books to expand your knowledge on Christianity and Jesus. So once I made this channel, I did not expect it to grow as fast as it did. And I've had quite a few people on Discord, which is an online platform that I'm on frequently, of people hitting me up with DMs and things like that and asking me questions of, hey, what are some books to learn about Christianity or Jesus that you have read and you would find like this is a good starting point of a subject? And so that's why I decided to make this list. So let's get started. So the first book is going to be The Resurrection of Jesus, a New Historiographical Approach. The reason why I like this book is it's by Dr. Michael Licona, and he does a lot better in his books than he does in argumentation and in his debates. He's not very good with debating, but he's very good with his scholarly research. And this is a great book. It's not too much. It's $35 on Amazon. On Logos, it's $25.99. And it just does a very good job at making a case for the resurrection of Jesus. It doesn't go over Habermas's minimal facts approach or his criteria for it. It goes over a historical argument for the resurrection of Jesus and takes around 200 pages. There's much information on Jesus, his existence, and those things in this book. And it also does a great job on going for arguments for and against miracles, including the canons of history. So there's arguments by Ehrman, for example, that say that the canons of history would not allow a miracle even if a miracle occurred. And this does a really good job through that. And other scholars, I think it's like 10 or 9 different scholars, going over why their criteria does not make sense. And it's a good book at doing so. So if anyone's curious about the resurrection of Jesus in depth, this would be a great start for that. The second book I highly recommend would be The Jesus Legend by Paul Rhodes Eddy and Gregory Boyd. The reason why I like this book a lot is because it does something that the other book does not do, the one I previously mentioned. It's a little bit more detailed in going through understandings of oral tradition. It has a focus on Paul if you're silent on the historical Jesus. So if you know mythicist Richard Carrier, he'll make this argument that Paul was silent on the historical Jesus, and a very other fringe amount of scholars have done so. So it does a great job at rebutting that. Also, the genre of the Gospels. It does a great job as explaining why they are Greco-Roman biography. And it goes through a whole bunch of other things. It goes through philosophers of history on why miracles should be shown in a historical lens and why you can make an historical argument for it. It's just a really good book at doing that. So $35 on Amazon, $35.99 on Logos. If you don't know what Logos is an online Bible platform. They have great deals. They have a free book every month. I like to use it because when I'm away from the house here in Germany, I can be able to, be able to read as much as I want instead of taking all my hardcover books with me. So this is just a great program to do so, a great software. And it's free, the software is. But no, this is a great book for that, to make a historical reliability for the Synoptic Jesus tradition. It does a great job at it, and it's very influential. And it's updated. Even Robert Price, who's a Jesus mythicist, gives this book credit. So it's a great book at doing so. Another book would be The Case for the Resurrection of Jesus by Habermas and Licona, who I mentioned earlier. Gary Habermas is a leading resurrection scholar in the world. Nobody studies the resurrection of Jesus as much as he does. He does a great job at it, and in this book you get the influential minimal facts approach. That is a very good argument, and it's very detailed in showing why naturalistic theories against the crucifixion and the resurrection do not hold up. So in this book, I've yet, out of all the books I've read, found one list of naturalistic theories explaining why the naturalistic theories don't make sense for the resurrection or the crucifixion of Jesus. It goes through 20 plus examples. I think at one time, it was 27 if I remember when I read it. It's been a long time since I've read it, but it's a very good book at doing so. Also, another plus about it is if you don't have an extensive vocabulary, you don't understand certain words that historians use or those things, this does a great job at explaining that. But also I will mention this book doesn't go as much of ancient historiography and what historiography is, but the Michael Licona, The Resurrection of Jesus, the historiographical approach does a great job at doing that. So that's the only minus I can find out of this book. Another great book is going to be Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh and Sean McDowell. If no one knows who Josh McDowell was, Josh McDowell did not have the best relationship with his father. And so he had a bad relationship with religion. So he started to look into things and try to disprove Christianity through evidence. And he himself later became a Christian. His son followed Sean McDowell. And so this book is a second edition to the book written in I think it was the 70s or the 80s, compiling evidence from the Old to the New Testament and Jesus on a very good job. This is such a good book. I would recommend anyone that is getting into the subject of evidence for Christianity to dive into. Anyone. It is such a good book. It's amazing. Only few differences I have with it, and those differences aren't that big of a deal. So that's not a problem. It's truly a magnum opus for the evidential perspective. It's very accurate on information, even more accurate than CARM, which is Matt Slick's online website for Protestant evangelism. And it does a great job on manuscripts and those things. Only issue that I have with this book is it doesn't go through the philosophy of miracles as much as other books do. But it's not technical. It's extremely detailed. It's easy to read. And it is such a good book. Another book I'd recommend is Confronting Christianity by Rebecca McLaughlin. Now, the reason why I like this book is because sometimes we get so focused with diving into what our Bible says and the historical context of it, and I do this all the time, and not necessarily as much as the social issues that come out of Christianity. So this book, it's only $17 on Amazon, $19.99 on Logos, and it goes through many social issues that we're dealing with currently today in a biblical perspective. Are Christians homophobic? What is the position of diversity among races, and how does the Bible tell us to deal with it? The raising of status Jesus put on women, which is very important if you understand historical context in the first century. Moral arguments for the problem of evil and hell, and Christianity's perspective on violence in today's world. And it's another layman, very easy to read, very easy to digest. I think it's maybe a little over 200 pages. Very great book to read as well. Another one is a bit of a different topic. This is Myth and Mistakes in New Testament Textual Criticism by Peter J. Gurry and Elijah Hickson. I found this book extremely influential when I started to study textual criticism later on, and I found a lot of the things that I was believing in were actually myths, and this book really helped me understand that. So it gives a great explanation of textual criticism, myths found in textual criticism. It gives updated arguments regarding of textual criticism in the New Testament. It calls out popular apologists, like I mentioned earlier, CARM, on how even them and scholars have made mistakes in their works that are just not necessarily true. Doesn't mean they're being dishonest, although I think CARM has a bullet to bite a little bit on that. But as much as that people are wording things in the wrong way, or they've read something and it's wrong, but it does a good job at sifting through those. Also, it's forwarded by Daniel B. Wallace, who's one of the greatest textual critics in my mind on the New Testament. He's very good at doing what he does. It shows how classicists and New Testament scholars view manuscripts and how they're different. It goes over many myths and that are argued in the public sphere of textual criticism that you'll even hear from people that you talk to if you're on Discord or some religious page, or you have some YouTube that you listen to, not by a scholar, and they make arguments for textual criticism. It does a great job to make you in the middle ground, to be conservative about your positions. And it's not much. $42 on Amazon is completely worth it if you are trying to see what textual criticism is about, and $27.99 on Logos. Another book is a very small book. It's Can We Trust the Gospels by Peter J. Williams, who's at Cambridge University. It's only $10.99 on Amazon. It's $20.99 on Logos. And it's absolutely a great book. It shows why we have a reason to trust the Gospels in a historical lens. So it talks about contradictions and what those mean. Arguments for the Gospels in the book include plants and an argument for that, like Ficus Sycamoris and Luke. Cities, how the Gospels name cities correctly. Lakes and seas, how they name them differently to show them that they're coming from different areas, but they're still tied to the same, but they're tied to the same place. And that's important when we read Luke or Mark or something. And we know that, Luke and Matthew would be a better example. Luke is, coming from some educated background. Matthew is not. It goes through the understanding of tax systems, geographical locations, and many others. It's a great book on that. It's short, concise, easy to read. A layman can read it, and it gives you a lot of information on the subject. Another book is going to be Jesus Outside the New Testament. Now, I haven't heard much about people actually quoting this book, and I'm quite surprised, but it's $31 on Amazon, it's $29.99 on Logos, but it goes you through the ancient evidence of Jesus mentioned outside the New Testament. It's based off of writings like Lucian, Tacitus, Josephus, Jewish sources, etc. It does a great job at it, Maribor Serapion, others. It's not hard to understand, and that's really the main point of this book. It gives you the evidence of Jesus outside the New Testament and how confident we can be about it. There's only one thing I found I disagree with this book in an extreme manner, but even there, it's not that big of a deal, and it has to do with Serapion. Still, the evidence is fantastic of what he gives. Another book is an old book, but a great book, and it's only $10 on Amazon, $11 on Logos, and that would be Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. The reason why I like this is because as Christians, like I said, I'm focused so much on the historical context of Jesus and the Gospels and the New Testament corpus. I don't focus as much on how to be a Christian and what that looks like. Mere Christianity gives us a good look on why Christianity should be the truth and how we should live our life according to Christians. It goes through arguments of morality and many other topics. It does a great job at that, and honestly, you cannot go wrong with any of Lewis's works, and that's why I had to recommend it. So with 2 books left, we're about done, but let's continue. Risen Indeed by Gary Habermas, who I mentioned is the leading resurrection scholar. This is a newer book, I think only about 2 or 3 years old. It's $28 on Amazon, $26.99 on Logos. The best thing about this book that I found is that it's able to represent positions against the resurrection, but be able to refute them. So it does a great job at steel-manning the positions contrary to the resurrection and be able to refute them. One of the things that I like about it, it goes over the Christ myth theory. This isn't the myth theory of that Jesus didn't exist. This is a myth theory that Jesus' story of the resurrection is an amalgamation of many different pagan beliefs and those things. It does a great job at that. So it gives scholars' take on the resurrection, different philosophical takes on the resurrection, the history of what faith means in our New Testament. What does faith indicate? And many other topics. It's great. It's a great job at doing that. It definitely is right there with the case for the resurrection of Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus, a historiographical approach. It does a great job at concising information. And also another thing that all the books I have mentioned thus far, all of them, one of the things I struggle with is when I read a book, somebody quotes something when it's not their own idea and they don't give me a cited source. I love to see the cited source where they're getting their information. Every book I've given thus far does a great job at doing so. When you see a claim, you'll see that cited source. You can look it up and see why they're coming up to this conclusion. And that's what I love about these books. The last one is a short one, but it's quite underrated. It's Bullies and Saints by John Dickson, who's a historian. So what it does is it's $15 on Amazon, $17.99 on Logos, and it does a great job at, and it's easy to follow, a way to view the church throughout the centuries, the good and bad of it. So it goes through the Crusades. It does a great job at that. It's a good objective basis for the good and bad of that, the hypocrisy of the church in different times. And the reason I like this book is it's concise and easy to read, but easy to follow and understand of historical events involving the church through the centuries. And again, it's cheap, super cheap, and it gives you an honest look at the history of the church. Whether you're Catholic, whether you're Eastern Orthodox, whether you don't even believe in a church, in the sense of the apostolic churches, if you're Protestant, this will be a great look into the history of Christianity by the church's measure, of the different crusades, the different events, and giving us an outlook that we should be careful about, going through the good of the church and the evil of the church. And it's understandable because the evil involves shame. We don't want to say that the church did evil. I'm not apostolic, but I can still say that. I don't want the early church to be evil in the first few centuries, in the 4th, 5th, 6th century. But nevertheless, there are evil things that it did. It does a great job at understanding that. So that's really it. I just wanted to make this little list because if people are curious or they are wondering what book they're itching to grab next, or even if they haven't read much and they're just curious about diving into something of Christianity, I think this is a great place to start if they're in the study like I am. So that's it. I hope you guys have a blessed day. And thank you so much for everything you've done for the channel. I'm super excited. I didn't expect this channel to be what it is, but I'm going to continue posting. I love it. And it's just giving information to people of the public that don't read as much or they haven't read the scholars I've read, whatever that is, and they want to further their understanding of an evidential case for Christ. So thank you so much. Have a blessed day.